7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross Global has finally been released. And with that most anticipated release, there's a lot of hype surrounding the game and a lot of people are doing a lot of things. A lot of people are re-rolling, a lot of people are making guides and all that type of stuff. So I thought I would dab my hand into it and show you some of the best SRs to invest in the game. Now I know that sounds crazy because if you're playing other games like say Dokkan, you hearing SR is just like ugh. But I am being serious when I say this, SRs are very viable. Not only are they viable, sometimes they outclass SSR. So with all that being said, we're going to be showing you some of the best SRs in the entire game, explaining you why and breaking down their skills all in this video. But of course, if you guys do find this video informative or entertaining, whatever the case may be, definitely hit the video with the like button. And if you want to stick around, man, for more Grand Cross content, definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, yes, this is not going to have any gameplay. My bad. The reason for that is because I'm still working on my overlay for 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross, and I don't want to use a jank JPEG while I'm talking about the units. SRs. I'm going to be telling you ones that help you out throughout most of the game, or can help you out if you invest in them early and then, you know, you can still use them later on. So let's talk about all 3 Elizabeths that are SR. So Red Elizabeth, just by herself, not with Hawk, is a really strong healer in the early game, because in the early game you actually don't have a healer. You get a healer later on because you get Coin Shop King for free. So she's a very good early game healer. Not only this, you can use her even beyond that if you want to after you unlock King, and she'll definitely help you out in some early boss fights because of her first skill being able to disable enemy attacks for 2 turns. And of course she's going to give your team sustain because of this heal right here, that you heal HP of all allies equal to 300% of attack and fills the ultimate move gauge by 2 orbs. And then of course your ultimate is just a huge AoE insta heal and then heal over time. And then her passive, which is very important because this is what gives her longevity, and I want to say worth the investment later on. So later on, you more than likely won't be using this SR Elizabeth too much. You'll be using her as a subunit in your team. If you don't know what I mean by that, I'll put it up on screen right now. Whenever I mean a subunit in the team, I mean the subunit literally in the team option, because this passive is allies are healed for 10% of max HP at the start of the next turn when taking damage. This is very useful in pretty much every piece of content, I want to say. Raid battles, PvP, story quest, all that kind of stuff. This is universally useful everywhere. But once you do get that SSR King, or later on down the line, once you do get better healers that come out, because you may not be watching this on the launch of Global, she's still going to benefit you because of this amazing passive that you can use literally anywhere. It has no restriction. Next, moving on to the Elizabeth and Hawk, the green one. Now, all of the Elizabeths are extremely different from each other and they all fulfill different roles. So this Elizabeth and Hawk is actually an AoE type of farming unit. This Elizabeth and Hawk may not get used too much though if you have someone like SSR Hauser, but some people do still prefer this green Eliz Hawk instead. So Eliz Hawk is really good for one because she has a really strong debuff right here. This is decreasing defense related stats by 40% for 2 turns, plus it's a single target 300% of attack hit. Also, whenever it means defense related, guys, defense related isn't just defense. As you can see right here, if you hover over it, this is defense, resistance, crit resist, and crit defense. So what do we get from that? You're gonna be hitting hard as fuck. So literally, by decreasing all of those, you are going to just make your entire team just hit so much harder. So you see she has some utility there because not only is she going to be a farming type of unit for you, she can also help you in certain fights and just get you through the story. Next is Super Hawk Illusion, which is her second skill. This thing inflicts pierce damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies. Now, pierce damage is interesting because pretty much how this works is that pierce increases your pierce rate, also known as penetration. Your pierce rate is very valuable because the simplest way to put it is that the more pierce you have, the more damage you will deal. There's a lot more complicated stuff like in the damage formula because I've looked up a lot about it. So just put it simple, the more pierce you have, the better. And then her ultimate is a 700% single target attack that will cancel stances. This thing is really strong and will pretty much one-shot most things in the game, I want to say, at least early on. So you can always just use this as long as you have like an attack and defense set on her, as you can see right here. You should be perfectly fine. Also, by the way, with all these characters, if you ask me like OP what equips to use or whatever the case may be, the best gear set in the game for pretty much every character right now is attack and defense. There's no character in the game currently that has like a different type of equip set apart from Green Jericho, I want to say. And then finally we have her passive, which is the Tavern Mascot. This increases all allies HP related stats by 10% in all battles except PvP and deathmatch. Now this is really good for any type of story content. This is where she also gets her longevity because even if you do pull Hauser, it's still worth kind of investing in her and getting this passive. The reason for that is because increasing all allies HP related stats by 10%, you may be like, oh, it's just HP. Well, no. HP related is more than just HP. You're increasing your HP by 10%, you're increasing your regeneration rate by 10%, you're increasing your recovery rate by 10%, and you're also increasing your lifesteal. So she has a lot of synergies with a bunch of different team comps and stuff in story mode that can make her very, very strong and just make that team comp very, very sustainable. Definitely make sure to get this, and like I said before, if you do wind up pulling Hauser after investing into SR Liz Hawk, don't feel bad or anything, because for one, she's an SR, she uses different pendants. And then for two, you can always just throw on a Liz Hawk in the sub spot for your story team or your farming team, whatever, and just use her like that. Moving on to the last Elizabethan Hawk. Now this one, this is the big one, boys. I'm not lying to you whenever I say this. This unit is kind of busted. So Rolling Hem attack is her first skill. This inflicts charge damage equal to 500% of attack on one enemy. What is charge damage, OP? Charge damage is ignore defense. Hog Knight Rush is the next thing, which is removes buffs from one enemy and inflicts damage equal to 360% of attack, then disables buffs and debuff skills for 2 turns. And her ultimate is the exact same as the green one, but what is this one used in the most? You see this unit used deadass as a raid unit. She is an amazingly strong raid unit, and we'll talk about why in just a second. She does so much damage, and it's very easy to get her to really ramp up fast. And you'll be like, OP, ramp up? What? As you can see right here on the passive fill up, you increase basic stats by 10% at the start of the next turn if the hero doesn't take any damage. This resets upon taking damage, of course. So how raids work, if you're completely new to the game, is that you can do raids currently in global with another person. So you and your friend go into a raid with 3 units. Well, it'll be 4 units because you also have a sub unit, but they're not in the fight. It's only 3 units at a time. So 6 units on the field, then the raid boss. The way how you would constantly endlessly stack this is by using SSR King, and SSR King is free, or you use Gustaf, and what you do is every time on your guys' turn, you literally just make sure that one of y'all freezes or petrifies Red Demon, and he can attack. And then you use Hawk Knight Rush so he can't buff himself up at all. He literally stands no chance. Also, you may be like, oh, people, what is basic stats? Basic stats in this game is attack, defense, and HP. So all these get increased by 10%, making her have more sustain, and then of course making her hit even harder. You're mostly going to be using her in raids, and she's going to absolutely destroy any raid that she touches, except the one she has type disadvantage in. She may not do too well. Now these next 2 units are the big boys, I want to say. These guys are really, really strong, and these 2 I'm going to be recommending for PvP, but you can also use them in PvE as well. First one, Gustaf, bro. This unit is ridiculous. He's pretty much the free version of Merlin, and Merlin's not in the game yet. And even when Merlin comes out, like I said, he's the free version, so he will be the best alternative to her. Gustaf inflicts damage equal to 360% of attack on one enemy, and he disables recovery skills for 2 turns. Now, if you don't know what a recovery skill is, let me show you. A recovery skill is this right here. It's represented by the recovery icon. And another thing is too, the disables attack skills. I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Elizabeth. Any type of attack skill means that this right here, it shows the sword. If it shows this right here, that's a debuff skill, and it doesn't count as an attack skill. Don't want you guys to get confused on that. Next, he has Freezing Field, which is literally what he's known for. Freezing Field freezes one enemy and inflicts 200% additional damage on frozen target for 2 turns. Next, we have Killer Iceberg, which inflicts spike damage equal to 350% of attack on all enemies. What is spike damage, OP? This is 2-time crit damage. As you can see though, his crit chance is kind of low right here, so you may want to increase that, you may not. I personally don't really even worry about it. And then lastly, his passive is Cryo Diffusion. He decreases all enemies' resistance by the value of the hero's pierce rate at the start of the battle, applies when entering the battle. Gustaf's passive will not be active 24/7 if he's in the sub-unit category, because as you can see right here, it shows the restriction. So if it shows a restriction like this, that means their passive will not always be active. But yeah, Gustaf is good in PvP, in raids, and even in harder, like, late story content, you can still get away with using them. Overall, this man is really strong. I deadass chased this guy yesterday. I'm not lying. I did like 3 multi trying to get Gustaf. I know it was stupid, but I got him at least. And he is really good because this freeze is the same thing as King's Petrify. And this gets even worse for PvP. So in PvP, there is counters to this, of course, but the best PvP team in the game currently, I want to say, is SSR Blue Diana, SSR Blue King, and Gustaf. Yes, I know it's extremely free-to-play friendly, right? Literally all those units that you can get for practically free. But that team is so stupid because you have AoE damage, you have a disable from Diana, you have multiple ways to make the opponent just not even move or attack you. Pretty stupid, and you probably don't have any friends if you use that team. But hey, at least you're climbing though. But yeah, Gustaf is probably one of the best units you can invest in long term because Of course, he's not going to be that beneficial in farming story content and stuff, but in harder content, he's going to be really strong because the freeze, he does decent damage, and he's a really good PvP unit. And finally, moving on to our last unit, and then I'm going to talk about one other unit that could be a runner-up. So the next SR that we're talking about is SR Thunder, the green one, by the way. Good not only in PvE but also in PvP. I would say he's mostly a PvP unit because of his passive, but you're definitely able to get away with using him in PvE because of his buff skill that he has, and we'll talk about that right now. So his first skill is lightning. This inflicts rupture damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies. Rupture damage is 2 times damage against buffed enemies. Next is lightning power. This is his buff skill that increases attack of all allies by 60% for 3 turns. This is very, very, very strong. Increasing your attack by 60% or 30% even at rank 1 is a really strong buff, and it's AoE, by the way. And it's going to be a very, very fun time for you with this buff in PvE content. Even in PvP too, this has a lot of use as well because in ungeared matchmaking, of course, you know, your stats aren't factored in, so you can definitely get an edge over your opponent by using this. Finally, we have his ultimate, which is Lightning King's Decapitation. It inflicts damage equal to 560% of attack on one enemy and shock for 4 turns. And then finally, we have his unique ability, which is the Lightning King's Magic. This increases all allies' defense-related stats by 30% in PvP. As you can see, it's defense-related. Now, from what we learned with HP-related, and we haven't saw attack related yet, but I'll cover that right now, I guess, too. Defense related stats isn't just your defense. It is your defense, it is your resistance, it is your critical resistance, it is your crit defense. You can see that it'll buff up all those and make your team tankier in PvP and making them survive longer. And of course, you don't have to have this unit on your main team. You could use this unit on your sub-unit slot in your team and get this buff off. Unfortunately, this only works in PvP though, it doesn't work in PvE. Now, let me talk about attack related stats too before I move on. I was going to find a unit that has it so I make sure I get it 100% correct, but I'm pretty sure attack related means your attack, your pierce rate, your crit damage are the 3 that it buffs up. It may also buff up crit chance, but I'm not for sure on that. But that is SR Thunder. Now there is one more honorable mention that I do want to say, and that is this SR Bond here you get from the story. He is really solid if you want to invest into him, and I definitely think he's worth it in the long run. But those are the SR units that I recommend you invest in. Now, of course, there are a lot here, a lot of ones that people use, like for example Slater. I didn't even talk about him, but people use him. Jericho is good to buff up blue teams. This red Jericho here is good to buff up red teams. So it's a lot of different things about passives and everything, and sometimes if a unit isn't good, maybe their passive is extremely strong, so it still is worth investing into them a little bit. But of course, if you focus on those SR units that I mentioned, I think they will help you and carry you a long time in this game. At least until you build up your account and you get better units, those guys will definitely help you out a ton. So guys, thank you all for coming out. It's been your boy OP. If you did enjoy this video, found it informative, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to see more content on the channel, I should be live with 7 Deadly Sins probably later tonight, or I may be live at the current time you're watching this video. So if I am, you know, just check my YouTube page and I should be live on there. But guys, thank you all for coming out. It's been your boy OP. And last but not least, man, you guys already know, you don't forget to drink water.